for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently. We have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we are dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy.
If it's true that founders of the Crips and Bloods are triple OGs, then I assume Craig Munson will be a quadruple OG. That will make Bird from Slauson a quintuple OG. If that's the case, then Bob Simmons must be a sextuple OG. And here's why. He goes back to the 1930s. He was born in a small city in the state of Texas called Childress. Around this time, the population was near 7,000 residents. The town was widely known for its agricultural income, which included cotton, beef cattle, wheat, peanuts, and hay. He spent 4 years in the Air Force, from 1956 to 1960. When Bob landed in Southern California, he quickly became familiar with South LA, including the community of Watts and the city of Compton. Bob was a straight G. He put women on the blade, he sold drugs, he was a thief, and he looted and burned buildings during the Watts riot in 1965. Yep, Bob was one of us. He was also a college football star, high school security guard, close friend and follower of Malcolm X.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips?
Bob was also an elected official of the Compton Willowbrook School Board, a position in which he later resigned when he felt talented white teachers and coaches were being railroaded out of jobs to make way for less qualified black teachers and coaches from other school districts. In his past, Simmons had also been labeled as a subversive by the Los Angeles Police Department, and the LA Sentinel, the black community's most widely read newspaper at the time, once called him a member of the black mafia. In 1966, he was the president of the Young Men for Total Democracy. By 1966, Bob had grown tired of the U.S. government and local politicians. He met up with black militant groups at the What's Happening Coffee House in Watts. Also present was Ron Karenga of the U.S. organization, rivals of the Black Panthers. Edward English, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and Bashir Muhammad, Brotherhood of Islam. Just like today, the people of Watts were getting none of the fruits of democracy and none of the benefits of the affluent. These groups came together to get their hands on the money by any means necessary. When Factor and the pastor found out what Bob was doing, they both held high praise for him and his partner John Butler, leaders of a group called Young Men for Total Democracy. Not only would Bob sit in on planning sessions for the center, he also became a peacemaker. He and 3 other subjects traveled to Chicago to act as peacemakers between the Blackstone Rangers and the Devil's Disciples. That was in July of 1967. While in Chicago, all 4 men were arrested by the Chicago Police Department for possession of marijuana and possession of a loaded revolver. Due to their alleged intervention of unidentified Chicago political figures, they were released and no complaints were filed against them. Bob was also a member of the board of directors of the Watts Summer Festival in 1969. Like many of us, Bob was non-judgmental when it came to hoodlums, thugs, misfits, outcasts, gangsters, the uneducated, or juvenile delinquents. Bob never forgot the background in which he came from, nor did he turn his back on the culture. He himself came from a gangster background to a military man that wanted nothing but good for our youth. He wanted our people to stay out the system. He wanted our people to have fun, enjoy life, and most of all, he employed troubled teens and young adults. Eventually, Bob found himself desperately looking for a place to open up a youth camp. Simmons tried his best to get funding for 6 months unsuccessfully. When John Factor found out what Simmons was trying to do, he got behind him and bankrolled his business endeavors. He told Simmons to find a campsite, and when Bob found one, he cut Bob a check for $75,000. Had you ever been to Factor-Brookins?
Yeah, so Mouse and Took were at Factor-Brookins.
Factor-Brookins get his name in part from John Factor, a Jewish businessman born in England. The family immigrated to the United States in 1906. They joined his elder brother, Nathan, in St. Louis, Missouri. In 1926, Factor perpetrated a stock scam in England that netted him $8 million. Some of his victims were members of the English royalty. He subsequently fled to Morocco and executed another major scam, rigging the tables at the Monte Carlo casino and breaking the bank. He then returned to the United States. This time he moved to Chicago. Legend has it that he worked as a barber in Chicago. He would later become known as Jake the Barber. In 1943, he was fined $10,000 and sentenced to 10 years in prison by the federal government. He pled guilty with several Confederates to charges of swindling $1.2 million from 250 investors in a fraudulent whiskey bottling scheme. He professed to plead guilty to escape his would-be killers. He served 6 years before being pardoned by President Kennedy. It's at this time in 1949 the immigrant arrived in Los Angeles. He quickly became known as a Beverly Hills businessman with a large bank account. In 1955, Factor took over the Stardust Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Many say he was probably a figurehead for other Chicago mob figures. He sold the hotel for $7 million in 1962. Allegedly, he ran the operation on behalf of the mob, with a lifetime take-home figure of $50 to $200 million. Mr. John Factor would eventually become politically active. He was the largest donor to John Kennedy's 1960 presidential campaign. In late 1962, Factor was scheduled to be deported to the United Kingdom, but received a presidential pardon from John F. Kennedy. He became a naturalized American citizen in 1963. John and his association of criminal mob figures earned him a spot in the Mob Museum. He became a close friend with Pat Brown in California and became a major contributor to his campaigns. While in California, he gave back to the underprivileged. He made large charitable contributions to kids in the inner city. Reverend H. Brookins was from Mississippi. He moved to LA in 1965. Reverend Brookins held the first general conference west of the Mississippi in the history of the First AME Church. He became the youngest ever host pastor in the church annuals. He had also served as chairman of the hospitality and housing committees. Now when you take Factor and you add Brookins, you get Factor-Brookins. In less than 4 years as the only staff member at Camp Factor-Brookins, Simmons created a radical program for straightening out the most disturbed teenagers in black communities the hardcore ghetto casualties that high schools, youth authorities, and probation departments unsuccessfully tried to salvage. Both Factor and Brookins got behind Bob Simmons, where he opened up Camp Factor-Brookins in 1967.
Bob Simmons was a good, serious dude, big dude. He was about the business. He loved the kids. He didn't want us to spend time incarcerated. He wanted us to get our act together in places, and he gave us a second chance to be in a placement.
Situated on the outskirts of Banning, Camp Factor-Brookins was a self-governing black family of 97 boys and one father, Mr. Bob Simmons. Nearly every boy had been to jail or juvenile hall many times. Some were murderers, others were armed robbers, and most of them were members of violent black gangs in Los Angeles, particularly the Crips. The first campsite was located in Poppy Canyon. That's 8 miles north of Banning in rugged, mountainous areas. Bob once boasted of having the baddest brothers in the city up there. Black kids that no one could handle. They said it couldn't be done, that no one man could take care of 97 of these brothers. Well, he did it, and they still didn't believe it, but they kept sending him more kids.
And he saw the leadership qualities of Stanley and other people in the community who had leadership qualities, and he gave them chances at employment. He was a good dude.
The majority of us grew up with our mother telling us what to do. If Pops came by every once in a while, it really wasn't to see us. It was to see our mamas, because our mamas was strong. And he had to come back to get some energy, regardless to how he got it.
Bob's concepts were somewhat revolutionary and somewhat gangster. They made up their own rules. They could smoke, they could gamble, and they could bring their cars to camp. However, corporal punishment swats across the ass and lower back caused a lot of controversy within the police department, causing people to look the other way. Bob knew how to get these kids' attention, as he was a disciplinary in his own way. That summer, he picked up kids off the streets of Compton and Watts and drove them out the ghetto for the first time in their lives. He gave these kids an alternative to the streets and an alternative to the juvenile system. While Bob kept a low profile, he quietly became the people's champ.
We used to come out there and be with Tookie and come get them, and it was like a weekend, Every weekend we would all be together.
He had 12 of the meanest, angriest brothers he could find. His philosophy was, if he could make it with them 12 kids, then he could expand the following year. However, when summer ended, none of the boys wanted to go home. So he decided to raise money for food and keep the boys together so they could all continue to live with one another. By September, he felt they were ready. He took the kids down the hill and enrolled them all in Banning High School. Simmons rented 3 rooms in the city where they all slept and studied, 7 or 8 to a room. The year on the mountain paid off. From the very first semester to the next few years, Bob's kids competed equally with the other students, and some went off to college. The following June, a lot of those students attended Cal State University Fullerton, and one received $10,000 scholarship to any university of his choice. Today's gang intervention and prevention organizations are nothing new under the sun. Bob Simmons been doing this shit. In 1971, in September, Factor-Brookins was given a suitable placement home status by the Los Angeles County Probation Department. Also, with the help of Reverend Hartford Brookins, minister of the First American Methodist Episcopal Church, Simmons was able to get funds through the Office of Economic Opportunity Program as a pilot program. Sunday, May 13, 1973, a news article referred to the guys as the baddest, roughest, toughest, meanest teenage rejects and dropouts in Southern California. Names such as Sweetback, Buddha, Tookie, Bogart, and Warlock are used instead of Donald, Stanley, Larry, Curtis, and Cedric. These are 97 boys in the camp, and one man, Brother Bob Simmons, was responsible for its order. Bob was described as a 275-pound bull of a man who, at an earlier time in his life, was pretty bad and mean his goddamn self. If you haven't a clue who this man is yet, he's often referred to as the owner of the Red House in Compton, where Tookie worked as a counselor and the Crips hung out at. Now let's keep it real. We hear all these good old stories about Tookie at the Red House and these warped memories of what went on and when they went on. But the fact is, Tookie landed in Factor-Brookins in 1972. It was Buddha who gave Tookie Bob Simmons' phone number. Tookie and Buddha worked for Bob Simmons as junior camp counselors in the mountains of San Diego.
If they didn't live around Tookie, Tookie didn't socially engage with you every day, you would think that he was a really horrible person. He wasn't. He was a decent cat. Loved his mother dearly, his sister dearly. He was a gentle giant.
Another less romantic but far dramatic part of this community's alternative education program was in Camp Rancho Vista, which nestled in the hills of North San Diego. It is in this country area that the agency's halfway house for boys had been placed.
So in the weekend, Took would get these passes, and we would come and get them. Was that like 72 or 71? Yeah, we would come
72.
Yeah, we would come and take Took from there on his weekend passes. He would either spend the night over my house, or he would spend the night over Melvin Hardy's house, or he would bounce back and forward. So we would on those furloughs, we would go to the Sportsman Park Record Hops. They would have dances, and we would all be at the record hops, and Took and them would be in there flexing, Big Mouse Took and all the big buff dudes. It was right before Big Michael Christian got locked up to YA. I believe Mike went to YA in 72. So they would all be up there posing, and we'd be having fun with big ass. We had a dude out of Compton named James Compton, and then we had a Compton named Compton, and then so both of those guys, they would be up there, and it would just be nice and exciting, man, for us to get out. We also had Black Johnny from Fort Trey Avalon. He would be with us back then too.
Not even a year later, after Tookie began working as a counselor, Bob Simmons' program was terminated. Shortly after the termination of Bob's program, according to Tookie, there was a problem brewing with another West Side gang, the Hoover Groovers.
Yeah, so, things were sort of heating up in the street with us, the gangs and things like that, And Bulldog tried to pull us all together through his, man, the courageous courage that this guy had, Bulldog. Man, I can't speak on him enough. He tried to bring us all together up under this umbrella called the Long Table and put us down there and let us just talk it out, man. And if we couldn't talk it out, let's go on the side of the building and duke it out.
Things had gotten out of hand when Lil Chocolate, a member of the Hoover Groovers, was murdered. The mysterious killing of Chocolate and the shootings of other Hoover Groovers were blamed on the West Side Crips, but mainly on one person, Buddha. Buddha was arrested for at least 2 murders, but released because of insufficient evidence. The West Side Crips were ambushing the Hoover Groovers regularly, but neither Buddha nor any West Side Crips claimed the killing of Chocolate. Little Chocolate, whose government name was Noel Willingham, was killed in gang violence at Locke High School, October the 9th. According to authorities, gangs such as the Crips, the Denver Lanes, the Walnuts, and the Athens Park Gang attended Locke High School at that time. In 1972, San Diego summer camp was terminated. Bob would then open up a boys' home in Compton, located off Santa Fe on Pine Street. Was you good friends with Buddha?
Anybody that was a part of West Side Crip was my homie, was my real ones.
On February 27th, 1973, Bob Simmons called Tookie into his office. They sat there silent when Bob gave Tookie the news. Buddha had been killed. Buddha was allegedly shot to death by Harrison, following an argument over a broken cassette tape. The two-story boys' home on Pine Street gets its name from the reddish-colored paint on the house. The house had 6 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a basement, dinette room, living room, and a garage with a half-moon circular driveway. Cuse, did you ever hang out at the Red House?
Yeah, I hung out. Me and Mouse would go to all them. Me, Mouse, and the former Big Al. We used to go to all, and we had Took's back. We used to come out there and be with Took and come get him, and we would. It was like a weekend, you know. Every weekend we would all be together.
I stayed in the Red House down the street there. From 74 to about 76. And I ended up at the Red House I was at St. John Boys School and somewhere in Inland Empire. And there was some outlaws. The whole place was a bunch of outlaws there. And they tried to correct my language because I still cuss. You know what I'm saying? And so I got into it with them. I got my head cracked right here. That's where I got that from. And so they sent me down to East Lake Juvenile Hall. They're trying to find a place for me to go. And they asked me where I wanted to go. I said, well, I wanted to go to the Red House. All right? I wanted to go to the Red House, right? And that's how I ended up at the Red House. Tookie was staying at the Red House at that time. I believe at the moment he was over on, we was on Stanford, 154th and Stanford. Right. And so I was staying in the Red House at first, but it was a dude named Ho Chi, Kenny. I can't remember his Baby Boy. Yeah, Baby Boy. I can't remember what it was, but Cuz walked up and slapped me out the damn chair. Right? Now I'm finna lay Cuz down, straight up. Because I don't put my hands on nobody like that, right? I'm not an aggressive guy. I set boundaries and that's it. So I was ready to serve Kenny. And that's when Bob Simmons said he's gonna send me over to stay with Took.
While in Compton, Bob published a small Compton newspaper with an article called The Baddest. It featured Buddha, Little James, Warlock, Melvin Hardy, Sweetback, Monk, and Tookie on the cover.
If that poster that you posted on your page, Buddha and Tookie are in the front, Bogard and Warlock are kind of in the back. I'm in the back because when I came, they had already set up. I'm there with the beanie on, and Lil James Compton from the 118th Street is right behind me. See, what people don't understand, in the beginning, it was East Side, West Side, and Compton. The Grandies, Wilmington Arms, whatever y'all want to call it, where Big Rebo and Bitter Child and Honcho and them is from. Mac Thomas and them, Boot Hill. See, people don't know nothing about that, but they always want to talk about the beginning.
Bob opened up the Red House in 1973 with 2 things in mind: money and decreasing gang violence. In order to get the money, he had to make sure the gang violence was down in the city of Compton. He opened up his doors and gave rooms to members of rival factions.
Because if you know, we were inside of those rooms. It was Crips and Bloods. It was a gathering, a drawing of the community of youngsters who would end up in juvenile hall from our lifestyle.
In Tookie's book, Blue Rage Black Redemption, he mentions some of the Crips that visited: Mad Dog David, Big James, Jamel, Big Curtis, Lurch, Fat Riley, and plenty of others. A regular visit there to drive iron was Little James, commander of the 118th Street Crips.
Porky, Paru Porky, Putin's play brother, he stayed there. And Bob used to tell us all the time that we got to make sure that Porky is protected. If Porky goes with you, you better make sure he comes back, because he's the only thing keeping this Red House here. All right? He would say that the Parus would come there and just blow the place up if we let anything happen. So it happened to me one time. Me and Porky was gone somewhere. I can't remember where we went. No, we went over on the Q. Babyhead.
Q102?
Yeah, Babyhead from Q102, he was there. He was in the house. Country. I can't remember what country was from, though, man. But we went over on the Q, and we ended up fighting with them dudes just to get Porky out of there alive. Yeah, because we couldn't let them happen to Porky, you know. But that was about one of the cats I can remember, man, that was there. Oh, wait a minute. We had a bounty hunter staying there, too. The fuck? One of the traps.
Sleepy staying there at the time?
Sleepy was there, too. Sleepy from Car Park. That's what you talking about?
No, the other Sleepy, the red rat Sleepy, I think he was from Brims.
No.
Yeah, there was a brim there.
Yeah, he used to ride the bicycle, remember?
I don't remember, cuz, no.
Remember you wasn't there when he was
I was he was at the Red House.
Yeah.
Everywhere Tookie when I stayed with Took the whole time.
Right. Was it strictly just black kids up in there, or did they have Hispanics in there too?
I never saw any white boys, no Mexicans in there, ever. Once, never once. Over at the place when Bob went over on Atlantic Drive, they had Mexicans there.
In 1977, Tookie moved back to the west side of South Los Angeles.
Do your history on Tookie's dying bed. He put in his book the day he met Donald Sweetback Archie. I already had my crew. He just became a part of my crew. But from the inner circle of every circle has haters. We can't worry about them. They're gonna be here. But because of haters within the West Side Crip group, they started to fill Tookie's head with a lot of nonsense. And he started doing things that were unethical and out of his zone. I don't believe Tookie killed none of those people.
Now, some may call this good journalism. I say we just trying to stick to the facts.
Believe this. I was with him the night that the infamous trench coat came up missing. I was with him the night that they say he killed all those people up there on 103rd and Vermont in that motel.
March 15th, 1979, Tookie was arrested for several murders. And April 5th, 1981, he was sentenced to death for 4 counts of first-degree murder. I know sometimes the viewers get confused and wonder what all this is about. How is any of this relevant? Why is this important? Well, it's important because the exact order in which events occur help us understand the cause and effect of those events, and thereby allows us to step back and view the big picture of history, how and why events unfold in the way they do, and how they are related. We don't prefer guys that make up their own history, that rewrite history, or distort history. Everyone's entitled to their own shine and their own story. We get that, and I'm with that. Therefore, a timeline is an important secondary source for understanding history. The ability to analyze and draw conclusions from timelines is important to the study of history. Anyone found guilty of distorting the historical facts of the Crips and Bloods is not conducive to the betterment of KMAC videos. S-Mac and I are just trying to keep things in its right perspective and give you guys content that you can enjoy. One thing about Bob, he was going to get him some money, and he wasn't going to do no hating. Bob basically became a real estate investor, owning over 7 properties throughout the city of Compton. Coming from a background like Bob's, he definitely found a way to figure out life.
Anybody listening to this that has ever been incarcerated with me, no, I don't care where you come from, because it ain't what you did yesterday, it's what you do today.
The great Bob Simmons passed in Compton, March 15th, 1985.